The snow had fallen overnight, covering the earth in a silence so complete it felt sacred. Pines stood buried to their knees. The wind was gentle, more breath than voice, brushing across the land like something afraid to disturb the stillness. In the bend of a narrow clearing, half covered in frost and shadows, lay something too small to be alone. Legs folded awkwardly, ribs rising in fragile rhythm, eyes wide but dulled by cold. A newborn Mustang foal. Her coat, barely dry from birth, had gone stiff at the edges. Flakes clung to her eyelashes like ash. She didn't cry. She didn't move. Only the shallow lift of her chest betrayed life. She'd been left. The herd's tracks told the story. A flurry of hooves, wide arcs of panic in the snow. Something sudden. Something chased them. The foal had been too slow. Or too weak. A decision was made in a heartbeat. Run or die, and she hadn't been part of it. Across the tree-line, the old wolf watched. He stood still as stone, nearly invisible against the dappled white and bark. His coat was matted and gray, scarred with old stories no one had heard in years. One ear curled from a long-heeled fight. His right hind leg dragged faintly when he walked. He had once been a leader, head of a small mountain pack, feared and revered, but those days were buried like bones beneath snow. Time had made him lean, weathered, and hollow-eyed. He no longer hunted with intention. He wandered, slept in crevices, howled only when the moon wouldn't rise. But something had brought him here. The scent of blood was faint, but it lingered, carried by the cold. Not death. Not yet. Just the edge of it. He moved toward her slowly, each step considered. No hunger in his gait. No stealth. Just a tired patience. When he reached her, he circled once and lowered his head. The foal didn't flinch. Her eyes barely registered him. Her breath hitched. She was dying. He could see it. The way her flanks trembled without sound, the way her ears stayed low no matter the wind. Her heartbeat fluttered like a bird in a jar. She had hours, maybe less if night returned early. He could kill her, end it cleanly. That was mercy in the wild. But he didn't. Instead, the old wolf did something strange, something that didn't belong to instinct or survival. He lay down beside her, his body curved around her like a second skin, not touching at first, just close enough to trap warmth between them. She smelled like fear and milk and something unnamed, something unformed. He remembered that smell. Faint echoes of his own pups swam behind his eyes. Pups that hadn't lived past their first summer. One had frozen. One had fallen from a ridge. The last he buried himself. He exhaled. His breath stirred her mane. For the first time, the foal shifted. Barely a twitch, just a tilt of the head toward heat. It was enough. Hours passed. The sun dropped behind the trees, and the cold deepened. He stayed. At one point, she shivered so hard her legs kicked against his flank. He didn't move. Her nose bumped into his chest, as if seeking something remembered from a dream. A mother's breath. A heart that beat strong and slow. He closed his eyes but didn't sleep. By morning, a faint change. The foal's breath grew deeper. Not strong. Not safe. But steadier. Her ears twitched when a raven passed overhead. Her tail flicked once, then settled. He stood, slow and stiff, shaking the frost from his coat. She blinked up at him. Her gaze was clear this time, not confused or empty, just waiting. He turned away, limped toward the trees, paused. She didn't cry, didn't neigh. She simply struggled to her knees, failed, then tried again. The sun pushed through a gap in the clouds. He looked back and waited. She rose on the third try. Her legs, too long and thin for her own weight, quivered like saplings in wind, but she stood. The old wolf didn't move. He watched her from the edge of the trees, eyes unreadable, body still as if carved from bark. 100 instincts whispered he should leave. She would slow him. She would die anyway. Yet his paws remained rooted, and she, uncertain and trembling, took a single step toward him. Then another. It wasn't grace. It was desperation. But it was movement. She paused beside him, sides heaving, eyes flicking between the woods ahead and the fading hollow behind. He turned without noise and began to walk. She followed. That first day was slow. He moved in half circles, always returning when her legs failed. She fell often. When she did, she would lay still, breathing shallow, until the cold nudged her back to motion. He never helped her, never nudged her forward or circled back with urgency. But he waited. Every time, by dusk, they reached the river. It wasn't much. Ice-choked, shallow, snaking through frozen reeds, but it offered water and a low dip in the land to rest. He drank. She did too, though it took her longer, her head dipping clumsily, muzzle trembling as she lapped. When she raised it again, a fine sheet of frost clung to her whiskers. She sneezed. The sound startled even her. For a moment, her ears perked. The wolf turned, curling beneath the long grass near the water's edge. She stood over him for a moment, unsure, then pressed her flank beside his and sank slowly to the ground. Their bodies didn't touch. Not exactly, but the heat passed between them all the same. In the middle of the night, something woke her. A distant howl, long, low, carried on wind. Her head lifted. The wolf didn't respond. He simply stared at the stars as if they had once promised him something and forgotten to deliver. The days blurred after that. They traveled early, before the sun could glare down through the pines. The forest was quieter in the morning, less brittle, more forgiving. The wolf chose his paths carefully, avoiding slopes where the filly would slip, veering away from brittle ice. Sometimes they crossed old elk trails. Sometimes they found scat or broken feathers or bones. When they did, he would pause, sniff, and move on. She learned to trust those moments, his caution, his stillness. She no longer looked for her herd. She had stopped calling for them. At first, that absence seemed like surrender. But over time, it began to feel like something else. Acceptance, maybe, or understanding. She stayed near him now, not because she was afraid, but because she knew she should. Once, they came across a clearing burned by lightning seasons ago. Charcoal trees rose like ghosts. The air still smelled faintly of smoke. The wolf paused at the edge. Something in his gaze darkened, turned inward. She stepped beside him, brushing her side to his briefly. He didn't look at her, but he blinked slowly, as if remembering softness. Later that day, she found a patch of moss beneath a fallen log and tried to eat it. He growled, not loud, not angry, just a firm warning. She froze, ears flat. He stepped past her, nudged a nearby patch of grass free of frost with his paw. He licked the roots once and then stepped aside. She followed suit. That was how he taught her. No words, no commands, just motion, presence. Some night she dreamed, short bursts of memory, legs twitching, breath hitching. He would open one eye, ears twitching, and watch until she settled again. He did not sleep deeply anymore. The wild had carved the restlessness into him long ago, but with her, something softened. He did not stand guard. He kept company. On the seventh night, a wind carried the scent of mountain lion through the trees. He rose at once, muscles tight, hackles raised. She woke to his movement, confused, slow to react. He circled her once, nose to the wind, then led her down into a ravine where the earth dipped low and shadows layered thick. They waited there until morning. She stayed pressed close, her breath shivering into his fur. When light finally broke through the trees, she followed without pause. And for the first time, the old wolf didn't look back to see if she would. The cold returned with a vengeance. Snow fell sideways now, wind-driven and sharp, slicing between trees and covering old trails faster than they could be walked. The foal trudged forward through drifts that reached her knees, head lowered, ears flicking with every gust. Her ribs showed again. She had grown stronger, yes, but not invincible. Winter had a way of reminding everything alive that strength was a temporary gift. The old wolf moved slower than usual. His limp had worsened. Every step left a deeper mark in the snow. He no longer scouted ahead the way he had days ago. Instead, he kept her close, circling back more often, his nose brushing the air for danger. Hunger sat between his ribs like stone. His eyes had gone darker, not dull, but guarded, watching something only he could sense. That night, they found shelter beneath a stone outcrop near the ridge. It wasn't much, just enough to break the wind, but it would do. The foal collapsed almost immediately, sides heaving, breath frosting the air in heavy bursts. The wolf stood a while longer, staring into the trees, listening. Then, without a sound, he lay beside her. The wind changed just before dawn. His ears twitched. He rose stiffly, careful not to wake her. The scent was faint but unmistakable. Wolves. Not his blood, not his kind. Younger, bolder. His tail dropped low. He padded to the edge of the clearing, eyes narrowing, nose twitching. 3 of them, maybe 4, still distant, still undecided. He looked back at the foal. She was dreaming, legs kicking slightly, her ear flicking against his absence. He returned to her side. When morning came, the snow had stopped, but the sky remained heavy with silence. The foal stood slower than usual, wincing as she placed weight on her rear leg. A small gash bled near her hock, not deep, likely from a frozen branch. She tried to lick it, failed, and gave up. He cleaned it with his tongue in firm, methodical strokes. They moved on. The forest thickened. Pines rose like sentinels around them. The sky disappeared behind their tangled crowns. He led her toward a ravine where the snow hadn't gathered as deeply. The scent came again, closer this time. Fresh. He stopped. She paused behind him. The first wolf appeared across the hollow, a young male, tall and sleek, coat unmarred by time. Behind him came 2 more, siblings by the look of it. Their eyes were curious. Hungry, unafraid. The old wolf stood tall, despite his limp. He didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth. But the message was clear. This is mine. The younger wolves fanned out, circling slow. Their steps were silent, measured. The foal's breathing changed. Quicker now, nostrils flaring. She looked at him, then back at them. She didn't understand the politics of territory, the hierarchy of challenge, but she knew the shape of threat. One of the siblings lunged. Not at her, at him. The old wolf met him mid-leap. It wasn't graceful, it was brutal. Teeth found for her. Blood sprayed across snow. The young wolf yelped, staggered back, one ear torn. The old one didn't chase. He stood his ground, panting hard, blood trickling from a bite on his shoulder. His eyes never left them. The younger wolves backed away, not from fear, from confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The strong claimed the weak. The old gave up what they could no longer protect. But this one, this half-broken remnant of a pack, had drawn a line, not around food, not over land, around her. They left. The old wolf didn't move for a long time. When he finally turned, the foal was still there, still watching. She stepped forward and pressed her muzzle to his side. Her legs trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper, something that reached back to the first night he'd stayed beside her in the snow. He rested his chin gently between her shoulders. The sun cracked to the clouds then, just enough to light the path ahead. Far beyond the trees, a fence waited. A barn. Human voices. He didn't know what would come, only that she had to get there. And he had to make sure she did. The barn sat low in the valley, a red smear against the snow-draped land. Wooden fences framed wide paddocks, and smoke rose faintly from a chimney tucked behind the house. The smell of grain, hay, and horses drifted faint but warm through the wind. The filly caught it first, lifted her head, ears alert, eyes narrowing as if trying to understand. Then she took a step forward, and another. The old wolf followed, though his gait had slowed to a shuffle. He kept the tree line out of sight, moving parallel as she crested the ridge. She hesitated only once, looking back at him, her dark eyes searching as for something unnamed. He didn't signal her on. He didn't need to. She turned and began to descend alone. A boy spotted her first. He was no older than 12, bundled in a too-big jacket and rubber boots 2 sizes large. He froze at the sight of her, then dropped the bucket he'd been carrying. The clang echoed across the frost. From the porch, a man appeared, wiping his hands on a towel. His brows knit. He stepped closer, squinting. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. The filly stopped near the fence. She didn't try to jump, or run. She simply stood there, snow clinging to her legs, her breath short and visible. The man approached slowly, palm open. The boy followed behind. "She's wild," the man said, "but not skittish." "She's looking at the woods," the boy whispered. Behind the last row of pines, the wolf stood. He could see her clearly now, flanked by humans, calm as a doe in spring grass. He watched the man kneel and offer a handful of feed, watched the filly lower her head, sniff, then take it. Her ears twitched once, then stilled. She wasn't afraid. The wolf exhaled. His legs ached. The cut on his shoulder stung. He lowered himself slowly into the snow and lay there, body curled tight, nose pointed toward the valley. A long breath left him. Then another. The silence around him wasn't lonely. It was complete. Down below, the barn doors opened wide. The boy led the filly inside, murmuring soft reassurances, as if she belonged to him already. The man glanced toward the woods once, squinting at the line of trees, but saw nothing. Inside, warmth waited. Feed, water. A vet who came quickly, shook his head slowly, then gently ran his hands along her spine. "She shouldn't be alive," he said. "Not in this cold. Not with that wound. She must have had shelter." The boy looked up. She had someone. Another horse? The boy shook his head. No, something else. That night, as wind danced through the trees, the filly stood in her stall and stared at the far fence. Her body had begun to fill out. Her breath no longer rasped, but her ears stayed tilted toward the woods. The man noticed. "She keeps watching that tree line. Maybe she's waiting," the boy said. "For what?" The boy didn't answer. He stepped outside after dinner, boots crunching through frozen mud, and climbed up on the fence. The sky had gone deep with stars. He looked toward the trees, hands curled tight in his sleeves. He whispered, just loud enough to carry, "Thank you." The wind stirred. No sound answered, but in the snow at the base of the trees, a single trail of paw prints curved gently around a stand of brush, then vanished. By spring, the filly ran. Her legs were stronger, sure-footed, muscles flexing beneath a smooth, sleek coat. She moved like she'd never known frostbite or hunger, like she'd never been left behind. But now and then, she'd stop mid-stride, ears turning, head lifted toward the hills, and listen, just listen. One morning, when frost still lingered on the grass, the boy led her to the pasture gate and opened it wide. She stepped through without hesitation. But before he closed it, she turned, walked back to him, rested her head against his chest for a heartbeat, then trotted off toward the fence's edge. The boy stood still a long time, watching her. In the woods, nothing moved. The snow had long melted. No wolf appeared. But the filly didn't need to see him. She already carried the gift he'd left behind, one that didn't fade, didn't weather, didn't require memory to endure. Compassion. Ask ChatGPT.